Hello, I'm Bernie Hayes. Today we'll be given some history lessons by Kariem Haqq, the founder of the 13th Amendment Freedom Week movement. Today on The Bernie Hayes Show. And welcome back. My guest is Kariem Haqq. Kariem, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Bernie.
You're looking great. You always look great. Every time I see you, you look great. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Bernie.
Kariem, on your card, it says, you have learned about the horrors of slavery. Now it's time to learn about the anti-slavery movement. And you founded the 13th Amendment Freedom Week movement. Tell us about what I just read and the movement itself.
Well, when we study a lot of history, especially about Black American history, we mostly learn all about the slave, the things that happened in slavery, you know, all the bad stuff, the traumatic stuff.
Yeah.
And and that's where people leave us. They just say, okay, you need to know your history. You need to know all the bad stuff that happened. But at the same time, most of them leave out the good things that happened. And we, here at the 13th Amendment Freedom Week movement, we want to not emphasize the bad, horrible things like slavery, but we want to talk about the abolitionist movement, the freedom movement, and the principles of freedom, because we feel like once you learn more about freedom, that's more of a benefit than just learning about all the bad things that happen. Mm-hmm. So
we've been doing this and lecturing for years and years and years on this. Any progress? Have people been listening and are they learning?
Well, it's a hard struggle because, like I say, we've been conditioned to just most all the history book. I studied history for years and years and years before I even discovered about the benefits of the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. Those are the amendments that we emphasize, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments. They were put in the Constitution for Black people after the Civil War. The 13th Amendment gave us our freedom, the 14th Amendment gave us our citizenship, and the 15th Amendment gave us the right to vote. But 99% of Black people, and I might be exaggerating, don't know anything about those three amendments. They know about other bad stuff that happened, all about the beatings and the whippings and the lynchings, and they hear about, you know, how they would hang a Black pregnant woman in a tree and cut out her belly, and the baby fall on the ground, and they stomp her. All those negative, bad things, traumatic experiences. Mm-hmm. They would like to emphasize those things, but very few of them talk about the benefits of freedom based upon the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to start talking about those things more than all the negative stuff.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about some of the advantages and some of the good things we should know about.
Well, we should, as a people, we should know about the freedom movement, not just the slavery. The freedom movement really started with the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. When we look at history and follow the timeline, we will see that from 1619 up until 1776, that's almost 160 years, the colonies were up under the British rule, British control. Right. And the British, the one that imposed that slavery on the colonies. So when the 13 colonies declared themselves independent of Great Britain in 1776, they couldn't change slavery if they wanted to before that. But once they declared themselves free from Britain, independent from Britain, then in less than 12 months, some states outright started ending slavery, and other states started gradually abolishing slavery. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time, once they became independent, declared themselves independent, that they was free to start abolishing slavery. So it kind of started right there with the Declaration of Independence. And during that same time period, in 1787, once the British were defeated and the 13 colonies, they they started being able to control the territories that was west of the 13 colonies and north of the 13 colonies. They call it the Northwest Territories. And those included Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota. They were all east of the Mississippi River.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, once they won that territory from the British, they put out what they call a Northwest Ordinance, saying that any of those territories, if they ever want to become states, that slavery would not be allowed. That was called a Northwest Ordinance, and that was in 1787. That's why none of those states that I just mentioned ever was allowed slavery, because the founders of America, once they became free, slavery was something that they was intentionally would like to get rid of, and but they couldn't do it overnight.
Sure.
So they started doing what they could at the time and gradually working on it. Mm-hmm. And then when the Constitution was established, they put in the Constitution that in 20 years, the slave trade could be abolished. That's why the Constitution ratified in 1788, 20 years later in 1808, the slave trade was abolished legally. Mm-hmm. We know that there was illegal slave trade up until the time of the Civil War, when Lincoln put a stop to it. Right. But we try to follow the history pattern in the freedom movement, and it culminated into the 13th Amendment. So we have the Declaration of Independence, we have the Northwest Ordinance that put a blow against slavery, we have the Constitution that putting a blow against slavery, and then later on we had the end of the slave trade, and later on during the Civil War era, we have the D.C. emancipation, and that also freed the slaves, and it also had the same language as the Northwest Ordinance. Northwest Ordinance said that no slavery nor involuntary servitude will be in those territories, otherwise, or except for punishment of a crime or something like that.
Okay. You know, Frederick Douglass was adamant about their speech of what does the 4th of July mean to the slave and the slave people. You know, and you've lectured on that also. So why was Frederick Douglass against black people celebrating the 4th of July? Well,
that's why we have to follow the timeline of Frederick Douglass. Mm-hmm. That was in 1852. Frederick Douglass just got into being an abolitionist, and he himself was free when he made that speech. Yeah. And slavery was still going on. Okay. But Frederick Douglass, he fought in the struggle for almost 50 years. He didn't die till 1895, and that was early on in his career. But he changed over the time. First, he thought the Constitution maybe perpetuated slavery. Then he realized that it didn't. That it was really a benefit, and it was anti-slavery. So, then when he made that speech, there was no Republican Party. The Republican Party then started a few years later after he made that speech. Yeah. And so he was an abolitionist, but there was no 13th Amendment, no 14th Amendment, no 15th Amendment to free us out of slavery and redress some of the problems that we had been dealing with.
Yeah, the Whigs were in control, right? Huh? The Whigs were in control at the time.
Well, the Democrats were in control.
Democrats, okay.
Yeah, the Democrats were in control. The Republican Party, there were some Whigs, but the Democrats had been mainly in control most of that time. Okay. And that's why the two parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, that's why they ended up in a battle during the Civil War, because the Democrats was in power. And then when the Republican Party came along, they were made up of abolitionists, and they wanted to stop the expansion of slavery and eventually do away with slavery. Okay. But the Democrats, they had a different mindset.
Yeah, so the Dixiecrats.
Yeah.
We got to take a short break, Kareem. Okay. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, that's
because you've got so much to tell us about.
Okay.
I'd like to remind the people that we're at the New Life Evangelistic Center. The new address is 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. Reverend Elliot Rice has been, as you know, providing services for those in need for more than 50 years. We'll be back with Kariem Haqq after this.
This is an opportunity that God has given all of us at this time to work together to reopen 1411 Locust, which is so urgently needed at this community. I thank God for Bernie Hayes and for his support and standing with us all these particular years. Now it's so critical that you and I do our part also, as Bernie's been partnering with us here at NLEC TV. We've continued to maintain faith, continue to move forward, and now the doors have been opened. The City of St. Louis has approved our architectural plans. We've been given the go-ahead to make the necessary renovations that are needed. We need some miracles, and that's why I'm asking all of you prayer warriors out there, all of you that are going to use that mustard seed of faith to remove the mountains. There's some mountains. Rich and powerful people who move back in the neighborhood, and they don't want 1411 Locust to open. They'd rather leave the people out on the street to slowly die, starved, used, misused, worked over by drug dealers, alcohol, and everything else. We want this place to be a place of hope for those that have lost all hope. And we want to open the doors, and we can do it. As you prayer warriors, go to God in earnest prayer, knocking on the doors of heaven. When He says, ask, it shall be given you, seek, and you shall find, knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Please continue to pray. Pray that God will just let the financial resources come in so we can make all of these repairs. He'll raise up the dedicated laborers for the harvest, that we will continue to see Him do exceedingly abundantly beyond what we can even ask or think. Yes, this is a spiritual battle. The principality and powers are fighting from every direction, but greater is He's in us than he that's in the world. And that's why I'm asking all of you to join us in prayer. Believe God with us. Contact us at New Life Evangelistic Center if you believe that there's people God laid on your heart that we should see. Ask for myself, Larry Rice, or my grandson, Chris Aaron Rice, that we can go visit and share the dream with you, and call us at 314-421-3020. Please pray. Get involved now. We need the body of Christ to arise as we work together to reopen this building for the glory of God.
And welcome back. My guest is Kariem Haqq. He is the founder of the 13th Amendment Freedom Movement. Kariem, you've been for years, really preaching about the 13th Amendment, and you've been doing lectures, and I've been in many of your talks and so forth. Why are you so adamant that people know about the 13th Amendment?
Well, the 13th Amendment, basically, like I said, the 13th, the 14th, and 15th Amendment, they were our foundation.
Yeah.
That's where all the other benefits, all the other progress we made was based upon those three legislation, those three amendments. The 13th, the 14th, the 15th. The 13th gave us freedom, the 14th gave us citizenship, and the 15th gave us the right to vote. We built up on those. But most of us don't know about them. We got to go back to the basics because we have gotten away from it. If we don't know our foundation, then we just like a ship without a rudder.
And nothing to build on from there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 13th Amendment, like I was saying, I believe I mentioned the D.C. Emancipation Proclamation that Lincoln did in 1862. It was April the 16th, where it freed the slaves in D.C. And it had the same language as the 13th Amendment. It said neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except for punishment of crime in said district.
All right.
So that was in 1862. Then the same year he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And that was during the wartime, where he was saying that those 11 states that was rebelling, if they didn't come back into the Union, that their slaves would be set free 100 days later, which was January 1st, 1863.
Okay. Now I want to ask you about Juneteenth, and then I want to really go back to some of these wonderful publications that you've authored. Tell us about Juneteenth. Why is that important?
Well, Juneteenth is based upon the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah.
The 13th Amendment is based on the Constitution of the United States. Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. He was one man. And he even went against some of his advisors. But he issued it, and it was a great document towards our freedom. But it covers only the states that was rebelling. During that whole time that the Emancipation Proclamation was in effect, there were still 7 slave states that it didn't cover.
Wow.
Okay, now he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, but they still had to defeat the South. And the South wasn't defeated for 2 years later. And after those 2 years later, then every time a general surrendered, starting with Lee in Virginia, 2 weeks later somebody would come and read the Emancipation to the slaves that were freed. So it started in Virginia, went on down to North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, and Texas was south and farther west. So it took almost 2 months to get to the people in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when the generals surrendered in that area, 2 weeks later they came and read the Emancipation Proclamation to them.
So they were like knowing that they were free.
Yeah, it was like June 19th, like that.
Right.
And so the Texans who were ex-slaves, they started celebrating their freedom.
Right.
Juneteenth was basically a Texas holiday.
Right.
But I like to say that even after Texas surrendered, that wasn't the end of the general surrendering. That wasn't the end of the war, because they had to go to Oklahoma. Okay. And Indian territory. On January 23rd, they surrendered and signed a treaty because Oklahoma fought with the Confederates. Oklahoma was a territory. Yeah. But it fought with the Confederates. And so they had to be defeated, and they signed a treaty after Texas, and slavery ended in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma was really the last area during that Civil War that surrendered. Okay. But the people in Oklahoma that owned slaves were the Indians. Right, that was the Indian territory. And Oklahoma wasn't a state, so they like to say that Texas was the last state. But as far as freedom goes and black people's freedom goes, black people, it didn't end with Texas. And then, like I said before, there were states that fought with the North that were slave states. And the Emancipation Proclamation did not cover them. So after Juneteenth, slavery was still legal in 4 states until the 13th Amendment. Okay. Those states were Kentucky, Delaware, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. Even though New Hampshire wasn't known to be a slave state, but it was a slave state at one time, but it never did abolish it. Okay. So the 13th Amendment abolished it. In those states that were slave states, it was 4 states that was left. Okay. So it was Juneteenth is okay, and we don't, we think we in the freedom business. If people want to celebrate Juneteenth, we're not knocking Juneteenth anything, but the 13th Amendment is what actually ended slavery in America. Okay. And if we go ahead. I wanted to see about the books that you wrote, because we're running out of time. Okay. Tell us about this particular book here, the 13th Amendment Freedom Week Manual. Okay. That's my first book, and it's a outline about establishing the celebration of the 13th Amendment, and it's a week-long celebration. Mm-hmm. But right now, since we just not getting started, we doing the 6th day, which we call a Jubilee Day, where it's more like a celebration of festivities and stuff like that. But there's 7 days, and each day there's something to learn. But that's why our motto is not only to celebrate and have music and partying, but to also educate. Educate while you celebrate. Yeah. So a lot of people, they want to celebrate, but they're not learning anything. And if you don't really learn it correctly, historically, then you really defeating your purpose, because you're still keeping the people confused. Okay. And what's this relationship between government, economics, and freedom? Well, all our books got the word freedom in it. Mm-hmm. And this book is it's important to know that there are levels and layers to freedom. So when you talk about freedom, it all depends on the type of government you have and the type of economic system you have also. So we explain the different type of economic systems and the different forms of government. And the thing is that you got to understand what is best government that contributes to freedom, and what's the best economic system that's conducive to freedom. And you put those two together to maximize your freedom. Okay. You have another book there we want to show. This is called The Free Market Manifesto. What is that? That book is designed to, right now, today, what we have going on is like you have two different ideologies. You have a free market ideology and you have a socialist communist ideology. And we all have heard about, if we're not read about, the Communist Manifesto. Well, my book is called A Free Market Manifesto. And it's like a counter or alternative to the Communist Manifesto.
Okay.
Where the Communist Manifesto, it breaks down the 10 planks. It talks about the 10 planks in the Communist Manifesto. And that if you incorporate those 10 planks, you can change a free society or free market society over to a socialist or communist society.
Okay. We got to stop here one more time. Got one more break to make. And Kariem Haqq is Kariem Haqq is the founder of the 13th Amendment Freedon Movement. We'll be coming back to talk about a special event coming up with the 13th Amendment after this.
What does God want you to do as a Christian? He wants you to devote your entire life to loving Him, placing Him first in your life. And from that place of devotion and love, He wants you to love others and to serve them as you love yourself. This means loving the immigrant. This means loving the homeless panhandler. This means loving the criminal. This means loving your neighbor and your enemy equally. So love the Christian who's sitting in the pew next to you, no matter where they're at in life. Love the person in greater need by extending hospitality, grace, kindness, and love. Love with your actions, because that's what God requires of you. If you truly love God, you will love others well, recognizing that He loves you first.
Benjamin Banneker, author, scientist, mathematician, farmer, astronomer, publisher, and urban planner, who descended from enslaved Africans, an endured servant, and free men and women of color. Young Benjamin grew up in Baltimore County, one of 200 free blacks among the population of 4,000 slaves and 13,000 whites. At the age of 22, having seen only 2 timepieces in his lifetime, a sundial and a pocket watch, Banneker constructed a striking clock almost entirely out of wood. Based on his own drawings and calculations, the clock continued to run until it was destroyed by fire 40 years later. He died in 1806. On the day of his burial, the house and its contents, including his clock, caught fire and burned to the ground. Benjamin Banneker.
The Burning Hayes program is produced at NLEC TV right here at 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. It's our new headquarters since they closed the 1411 Locust building. We're working to get back into that building. In addition to that, trying to help so many people through a wide variety of safe houses, training programs, transportation assistance, so many ways people are getting help because of all of you that are supporting the work of New Life Evangelistic Center. Now, if you'll send a gift of $25 or more, we want to send you this special, the Burning Hayes Show cup. And we're giving that to people. It's just a way of saying thank you. So when you send your gift, request a cup. We'll be happy to get it off to you. It's New Life Evangelistic Center, P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri. That's 63166. You can give online at nlecstl.org. Now I'm really asking all of you to join us in praying. The needs are so phenomenal at this particular time. So many hurting and homeless people are contacting us daily, but we're able to help them because of each one of you that are praying, caring, and sharing at this time. Tell your families and friends about NLEC TV and get directly involved yourself.
And welcome back. My guest is Kariem Haqq. And Abdul, we showed 3 books just before we went to break. How can we get copies of the books and how can we reach you?
Well, you get copies of books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can order them, or either you can order them through me. My email address, telephone number, all that's there.
Tell us about it.
I suggest that you...
What's your phone number?
Eric code 314-537-4169. And my email address is kahaqq@sbcglobal.net.
Okay.
So you can contact me, and I can make sure you get copies.
Okay.
And the blue book, like I was saying, it shows how to change a socialist or communist system back to a free market system.
Right.
And it gives you the 20 Bill of Rights, economic Bill of Rights on how to do that. Once you establish those, you go back to a free market system.
Tell us about the day of Jubilee. Jubilee, educate while you celebrate, based upon the ratification of the 13th Amendment. I understand it's going to be on December the 3rd?
Yes, that's December the 3rd right here in St. Louis.
Where?
It's 1330 Albert Avenue. Mm-hmm. That's right behind the old Sears building. The old Sears building is owned by the Urban League right now.
Right.
And that strip center right behind it is also owned by the Urban League. But we rent a space from a organization called the Heaven Sent Events.
Right. Okay.
And we're going to have this event on December 3rd. It's from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
And we will have a panel discussion. We will have a DJ. We will have different type of entertainment. We just try to have a festive activity. And during the panel discussion, if people want to ask some questions, we should have a question and answer period right afterwards. But we want people to come out. Everybody's welcome. It's for anybody.
So you have books on sale there?
Yeah, it'll be some books on sale.
Mm-hmm. Kariem, why are you so adamant about these people learning this information? I asked you that earlier today, but you've been doing this for years and years and years, and you're still doing it. Are you satisfied with your progress?
No, I'm not satisfied with my progress.
Okay.
I would like to make more progress, but it's so important. The freedom is so important that we see a lot of suffering, and we see a lot of people just being manipulated and abused because there's some things that's just missing in our community. Mm-hmm. And the principle, the education about freedom, the education about economics, all those things we don't seem to. Those are like missing keys. So in order to help the community, we have to have a knowledge of the freedom principles, and we have to have a knowledge of economics. Right. Now, some people have issues with the 13th Amendment because of the word accept. And it says accept, okay? But you have some people, but that same word is in the Northwest Ordinance, is in the, it's in the D.C. Emancipation. It was in the Civil Rights Act of 1866. All those are the same word. Okay. And some people will find fault in almost everything.
Yeah.
They find fault in the 13th Amendment. They find fault in the 14th Amendment. They find fault in the 15th Amendment. You have people still talking about we can't vote. You still have people talking about you're not citizens. You still talking about people you're not free. They find fault in anything.
This is wonderful.
We do not believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We know that the word acceptance in there, but at the same time, you have a lot of these people that are saying this. These are Christians, these are Muslims, these are Jews, and the word slavery is in their Bible, in their Quran. Do they throw their Bible out? Do they throw the Quran out? Okay. We learn how to get a better understanding.
Kariem, we're out of time. And it's so wonderful talking to you. Every time I talk to you, man, I learn so much. We didn't get a chance to talk about Elijah Lovejoy and his friend, Mr. Hall, Everett Hall, who Hall's Ferry, New Hall's Ferry, and Hall Street are named after. Maybe next time we'll do that. Kariem, thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, I appreciate it, Bernie.
All right. Thank all of you for
really
viewing
fast.
too. Thank you for watching and supporting the New Life Evangelistic Center. We're 2428 Wilson Road, Overland, Missouri. I'm Bernie Hayes. Stay safe. Get your shots if you haven't. Have a great day.